Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is a review of the Corrine movie. This video is not intended for children under the age of 13 years old though. So, I have good news for everyone. The live-action Corrine film was released earlier this month. This means that the movie, but the weird part is there was no trailer and it's currently available on Amazon Prime. It's $11 to purchase outright online. It's $3.99 to rent, and it's at no additional charge to you if you have Amazon Prime, or I think the kids one too. So that's all to say. The movie's out. It's available on a available streaming service. It's not super niche or anything, or as bad as HBO Max, which is great. I'm glad this wasn't on Cartoon Network, but I'm also not happy with the lack of advertising it's received. And let's get into a non-spoilery bit. It's definitely aimed its target demographic to middle schoolers. It definitely aimed a little higher than what the books and the stop motion and the marketing of these products are. The casting is on point with every single character. This has fantastic casting. Like, the main actresses, they're great. It does try to use cinematography, but I do think it's to its detriment throughout there because it does affect the pace of the film to an extent. And there's mild character changes that are made that do bother me a little bit because it's like Gwen's a little too clingy and then the mom's a little too inattentive. The dad is a little too mean-spirited. So there's minor changes to the character, but I don't think it's huge. I'm just not a huge fan after seeing really good characters and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I'm recording outside. I just felt like being outside right now because it's a weekend and I can be outside. Yay. But beyond that, that's not the spoiler-free one. So let's get quickly into logistics of this film. It's a 1 hour long movie, not very long generally. So it's about 30 minutes shorter than the previous American Girl movies released. Thank you, chickens. Previous American Girl movies released in the past. And it is very, like I mentioned right there at the beginning, it is definitely meant for an older audience, but not that much older. I'm going to say between 11 and 13 as opposed more so, or even like 10 to 13, as opposed to like, I'd say Corrine and Gwen's stories are really meant for the 7 to 10-year-old crowd, as far as demographics go. And as such, they did make some minor changes. The focus has been narrowed down, for lack of a better term. Certain story elements have been cut. I'll just start with the biggest thing. The timeline the film runs on. In both the book and stop motion, the timeline is it's a few months, really. So it jumps around a little bit, so we start off, they moved in, they're a few weeks into me moved in, and it takes place over about 2 months, basically. From what I remember, the first book was about 2 months. And then, this movie literally takes place in about 15 days. So, that is a tight timeline. In comparison, it's more focused and narrowed in. And and one of the primary elements changed was how the parents feel about each other. Hey, Dad. Anyway, sorry about the little interruption. I'm outside watching kittens, so it's a whole thing. They get wily. But anyway, our movie starts off with Corrine and her sister on ski slopes with a nice cinematic panning shot that's real pretty, but honestly, I think it took away a few minutes of actual story from the film. So I'm gonna dock it on that, to be honest. But it's pretty. I mean, it is filmed in Alberta, Canada, but they did pretend it was Colorado. That's a whole thing. So it starts with that, and then we see the girls skiing and snowboarding respectively. And they come across a service dog named Flurry and two trainers. This one guy who has really cool hair and he's hot. I don't remember his name, but he's hot. And then this African-American lady who I also don't remember the name of, but she's one of the new characters that was announced on the cast list. And they're talking about how Flurry has training. She has about 2 weeks to be certified as a proper dog, and all she really knows how to do is the bare basics of her trade. So Flurry they're thinking Flurry's gonna flunk out of the program and send her back to the breeder. So Corrine gets the idea that Cece had convinced her parents to let her help train Flurry. So because they don't have a lot of time on their hands, because they're training multiple dogs, the trainers. Meanwhile, they talk a little bit about Gwen's ice skating lessons, and they do touch on Corinne's friend's existence, but she's on a 2-week vacation during the events of the film, so it's sort of different. So we don't see her best friend, which is fine, I guess, but she really was an interesting character to highlight differences and help make the ice skating plot more relevant. It's what it is. So anyway, I'm going to pick back up here. I'm a little out of breath for some reason, sorry about that. But that's sort of what happened, and then we saw Corrine talk, and Nancy walks in and she talks to her dad or whatever, and then he makes a joke to all those kids he's about to teach how to ski, you should listen to him, he's a great teacher, of course, because it's her dad and she's hyping him up. Then they go home and they're talking about ice skating practice, and we see the mother character and Arnie, and I don't know if it was just the photos, but Arnie, he looked ancient in those, and he looks a little younger here, but he still looks a little old, if you ask me. And of course the mom, well, she looks young, but most Asian women do until they turn 45 anyway, so that doesn't really doesn't make a difference. So we see them, and the mom's sort of condescending towards Corinne's idea, but Arnie's all for it because he's a very supportive stepfather. Easily one of the better characters in this film are Gwen and Arnie. I feel like they have a lot of the emotional heart of the film attached to them. And then there's also... So Gwen, Arnie, they're doing good. We see their dad, come relatively soon after that. And for some reason, I did take a photo of this, by the way. Anyway, the parents... I might sound a little disjointed because they ran into an issue, and yeah, but the parents are a little more hostile towards each other despite the divorce taking place 3 years ago in canon, which is seen in a later clip of the family at a skate rink. They're at this ice rink with Gwen, and the trainer's talking about how she's good enough for competition after a few years of figure skating practice. She's getting private lessons for the past 3 years, which means that Arnie's been in their lives for 3 years, but they just moved in together, which is a little tighter. This is a little longer than what we initially had, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but the girls are older in this. So Gwen is 11 or 10 years old. I think she's 10 years old. And Corrine is 13 years old, which is an interesting choice that was made, and definitely one aiming towards that middle school audience, because, the girls are older. So they're talking about it. Of course, Arnie's also game for Gwen having all of her spare time taken outside of school by ice skating because he's passionate about it and he cares that they're passionate. And his mindset is even if she fails, she only has to try it once. Even though of course, Corinne's mother, who's a little more of an Asian mom than she was before, is all but what if not? And they do touch a little bit on their business, but barely because it only takes place over 2 weeks. They're all what if people don't like the Chinese names of the food? They don't really care that deeply about that plot. And they completely cut everything regarding the racism plot, by the way. It wasn't there to speak of. I don't think I saw it at all. So there's a few different things there. And I remember Corinne's I want to start training the dog, and Gwen can't help me now because Gwen did help a little right there in the beginning after her parents agreed. But then she's wait, I want to start training for competition. And she has her first competition in 2 weeks, which seems really narrow to just toss a kid into for the first time and really stressful for poor Gwen. But she's game for it. She's ready to take it on. She's done this. She's very enthusiastic and stuff about it. So there's so let's just, a bit of the film is spent, we see her at her dad's house, and they play video games together and be nerdy or whatever, and they're having fun there. So we see a little more interactions with the dad than I expected to see in the film, the biological father specifically, because Arnie's still a dad. We don't see a ton of Arnie, by the way, but when we do see him, he's cool, so that's why I say he's well done. He's similar to the book one, but he's not as European, if you know what I mean. He doesn't have an accent, which is another way of them avoiding the talks about race and immigration. Great. Gotta love how the movie really sidestepped that plot, because Arnie is an immigrant, or from an immigrant family, so we're just gonna ignore that now. Now I hear sirens out here. Anyway, we're up to the plot about halfway through the film. And Corinne's training of Fleury isn't going well. They're saying, like, Fleury needs to be better at this, so she really starts putting herself full force into it and then getting sort of mad because she doesn't want to fail at something she set out to do. This is her thing that she picked. And her mom is even questioning her a little still. Even though she's letting her just take it completely on her own, so like I mentioned, at a ski resort. Not a good idea. So they're having some difficulties where Fleury's not really finding what he's setting out to find, and it's not exactly ideal. So, like, he leaves the trainer out in the snow, and he gets all mad because he was supposed to be found. He's a dude in a jacket, and he was laying out there for like 5 hours with no dog to find him. And now it's raining. Oh, God. I'm now inside. Sorry if you hear any background sounds, but it is what it is. I also have kittens inside, so if I end up pausing a lot, that's the issue. So we're going to skip a little bit to the end of the film because there's some stuff, but not a ton. And so let's just say the rising action towards the end or the climax of the film is Gwen's ice skating competition is on the same day Corrine has to do Fleury's qualifier to see if they'll actually become a mountain rescue dog. So sorry about that little pause. Like I said, kittens. So the qualifier is at the same time. I'm doing a voiceover for a video. So Fleury's qualifier is on the same day as Gwen's competition, and Corinne's late. So of course Gwen decides to run out into the wilderness completely by herself, which is something that Corrine did in the original book, but she was skiing out to their sister's shrine to get a good luck charm for Gwen so she'd do better because he felt bad that they put him up in the trees, which the shrine was at the very beginning. But they don't bring it up again. I don't know why they even brought it up if they didn't use the reason it existed as a plot point, to be honest. Because the necklaces Arnie gave them they considered him good luck because they trust him, which I find very cute. Gwen trusts him more so than Corrine, though. Corinne's more like, he's just Arnie, like, they don't call him stepdad in the film. So, yeah. Anyway, Fleury manages to pass. Fleury pretty much fails his qualification. And they'll tell Corrine that she's going to go back to the trainer. So Corrine gets really broken up, shows up late to the ice skating rink. Gwen did relatively well, but she did, fall once. It's her first competition, she shouldn't beat herself up, but she does anyway. And then she's hurt that her sister wasn't there, because she's a lot more clingy and attached in this. Maybe it's because she had more conscious memories of divorce in this story, I'm not sure. So she runs off into that blizzard. They go and search for her, the mountain rescue team, and Corrine brings Fleury because Fleury's a rescue dog, and Fleury finds Gwen, and they're all mad, but the mom's nicer to Gwen because she's allowed to mess up, but Corrine is never allowed to mess up. Double standard, whatever. So, there's a kitten by me if you hear purring. I have no idea if you hear that, but... So that brings us to the end of the film, and they all have hot cocoa, and the dads talk for a bit about how the girls are growing up and how both of them are important parts or whatever of their lives. But I did find the mom somewhat annoying and unappealing, and I did think that Corrine herself was a little less mature, strangely enough. She lost maturity between the different ones. And this is all to say, I like the film, and I sort of did a summary of it, and I hope this isn't too long-winded. I watched it twice for this, and I took photos of my screen, because I think it's the best way to avoid copyright. So when you see those are photos. I wasn't sure of any other way to do it, to be honest. I know that you can take screenshots, but I'm worried if those would be too close, so the photos of my TV was the better option for me. I watched mine on Amazon Prime. It's good in a bubble. If you haven't, my consensus is if you've never read the books or seen the stop motion, you're gonna like it more. If you have, prior to that, you pre-established her mom as being more business-oriented and kind to her daughters, so it's and Arnie as being more inherently different from other white people, where he's just pretty much treated as the norm. The dad gets significantly less... I feel like he gets a lot more screen time in this than I expected, because he didn't get very much in the series. He got some, but not much. And they definitely cut out certain things, like the ski pass, and Fleury being adopted, which Fleury is adopted at the end of the film. I'm going to mention that. The parents come to an agreement with the trainers, but Fleury is a golden retriever that's a purebred, and she's not truly theirs. she's allowed to stay with them, you know? So that's sort of so I'm gonna say good enough. I'm glad we finally got one for a girl of the year that's not white. That's an achievement in and of itself. And so do you watch it? Yeah, probably. Only because I want to see more brown films. Oh, there's another kitten coming my way. Bye. Only because we need to see more dolls of color get films through AG, and this is the first girl of the year who isn't white to get one, so that's real nice. I'm very proud of them for actually doing it, even if they didn't advertise it, and it was stuck in legal issues for a while, to be honest. Like, years. So yeah. Bye.